Welcome back to a new episode of Wheels of History. Before we tell you all about today's protagonist, we invite you to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one. For you, it's just a small gesture, but for us, it's crucial to continue sharing information about vehicles that have left a mark on history. Today, we'll explore a timeless icon, the Vespa. The Queen of Scooters is born with the Republic. With the patent application for a new scooter filed at the Central Patent Office in Florence on April 23, 1946, the Vespa was officially born, a symbolic reminder of the revival of Italian motor transport after World War II. In this episode, we will retrace the major stages of its evolution. The scooter's advent, with its distinctive design arising from a rational conception of structure based on primary functional and construction needs, coincided with the founding of the Italian Republic, almost highlighting Vespa's significant contribution to the nation's motorization from the early years of post-war reconstruction. Despite its intent as a mass transportation solution, Enrico Piaggio, from the first public unveiling at the Rome Golf Club, established a policy to promote the Vespa's image as high-end. This strategy also influenced its distribution. Through the establishment of Sarpi, Piaggio reached an agreement with Lancia to showcase and sell the new scooter in the showrooms of the Turin-based automobile brand, next to the most prestigious cars of the time. The unique structure of the vehicle and plans for high-volume production required an in-depth study of product industrialization. Enrico Piaggio did not hesitate to send two of his engineers, designer Corradino d'Ascanio and technologist Lanzara, to the USA for training on the latest production methods in the large-scale automobile industry. Through ERP Plan Aid, Piaggio also obtained a powerful and fast press from the USA to accelerate production of the sheet metal parts forming the vehicle's body. Another concept borrowed from the USA was installment sales, which were rare in Italy at the time, paired with the lower price compared to motorcycles of the same engine size. This concept helped sway initially skeptical customers who were cautious of the small wheels and lack of any central frame structure. A well-chosen name. The name Vespa was not new to the motorcycle world, but likely inspired by the characteristic hum of two-stroke engines had previously been used for two small motorcycles, a Miller 98 with a Sachs engine, presented at the Milan show in 1933 and named Vespa in 1934, and an MV-98 launched in 1945. The decision to adopt this name for the Pontedera scooter is said to have stemmed from Enrico Piaggio's remark, "It looks like a wasp," upon seeing the first prototype, marked MP6, designed by d'Ascanio, after deciding not to produce the previous prototypes designed during the war in a relocated Piaggio aeronautics plant in Biella known as Paperino. In Vespa's case, the name was inspired by the vehicle's distinctive design, especially the shape of its rear section. Short, easy to remember, and associated with a new dynamic logo, the name, along with a careful original advertising campaign, played an undeniable role in spreading the Vespa's popularity. The first models. The MP6 prototype, which already contained the fundamental elements of the Vespa's design, was powered by a 98 cubic centimeter, 50 by 50 millimeter, two-stroke engine with cross-flow cooling and a deflector piston. It featured rear and side engine placement with natural ventilation and lacked a rear suspension, relying instead on two rubber bumpers supporting the engine. Its 3-speed transmission had an innovative handlebar control system connected to the gearbox via rigid rods and angle joints. The most significant innovation was the load-bearing body, with the complete elimination of the classic tubular frame. While there were motorcycles with a load-bearing body in history, they were usually prototypes never produced on a large scale. New to the Vespa were also the twin-disc wheels, bolted together, allowing for easy tire removal at a time when punctures were still frequent. Alongside this first prototype was a second one that, while retaining the engine's non-forced ventilation and the right side air intake and outlet vents, featured some design differences, like an alternate profile of the two rear protrusions toward the footboard. The model released for sale as the Vespa 98 differed from the prototypes, equipped with an engine with forced ventilation and a circular opening in the right cover for fan intake. Initially tested only on the cylinder, cooling was later extended to the cylinder head, Additionally, the two lateral bulges were taller and completely rounded at the front. This change, combined with a more backward slant of the front shield, was one of many improvements made over the years, without altering the Vespa's essential design. A luggage rack and spare tire support were optional features. In terms of performance, besides a maximum speed of 60 kilometers per hour, which was considered adequate, the Vespa offered an appealing fuel economy. Just 2 liters of a 5% fuel mixture per 100 kilometers.
The 125 model, introduced in 1948, featured an engine with a bore increased to 50.5 millimeters and a stroke reduced to 49.8 millimeters, achieving a displacement of 125.85 cubic centimeters and an output of 4.5 horsepower at 4,500 revolutions per minute, compared to the 3.2 horsepower of the 98 model. Consequently, the speed increased from 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. The most significant innovation in this model was the addition of a real rear suspension, with the engine gearbox unit hinged to the body and a suspension element consisting of a spring and hydraulic shock absorber. In 1951, the 125 adopted a hydraulic shock absorber for the front suspension, and the complex shift control rods were replaced with a more practical dual cable system. These were the years when scooters proved themselves in competition, demonstrating they could match motorcycles with larger wheels, both in speed and on uneven terrain. The Vespa distinguished itself in numerous city circuits, often equipped with a fuel tank between the knees for reliability competitions, reaching a peak with entries in the International 6 Days trials in Italy in 1948 and 1951. But above all, the Vespa shone in its rivalry with the Lambretta, setting prestigious world records at speeds higher than similarly sized light motorcycles. The birth of the Vespone trademark. A decisive boost to satisfy Vespa enthusiasts craving speed came in 1955 with the legendary 150 GS, capable of reaching 100 kilometers per hour with a 9-horsepower engine. Also notable were the introduction of a 4-speed gearbox, 10-inch wheels, and a single saddle. This Vespa proved that a scooter could offer a lively and safe ride thanks to excellent engine performance. In 1959, the 150 switched from a piston-controlled intake system to a rotary valve design, using one of the internal flywheels of the crankshaft for control. This intake type allowed the engine to run with only 2% lubricant in the fuel mixture, drastically reducing build-up and exhaust smoke. A new type of carburetor with an intake filter and a new exhaust muffler also kept noise levels below 80 decibels. All these innovations extended to the 125 in 1960. A Vespa for the younger generation. In 1964, with the introduction of the Vespa 50, the scooter world opened up to 14-year-olds. This move would yield great results in the following years. Although the power was legally limited to 1.5 horsepower and the maximum speed to 40 kilometers per hour, the opportunity to own a more complete and attractive vehicle than a basic moped quickly achieved the desired effect. That same year, alongside the smaller Vespa, the larger 180 SS was introduced, equipped with an engine over 181 cubic centimeters, still using piston-controlled intake, delivering 10.5 horsepower at 6,250 RPM and achieving a top speed of 105 kilometers per hour, thanks in part to aerodynamic improvements to the front shield. The new 125 model in 1966 featured an engine with a 45-degree inclined cylinder, updated bore and stroke measurements, 55 by 51 millimeters, and an output of 4.8 horsepower at 4,800 RPM. For the first time on a 125, it also included 10-inch wheels, while the styling borrowed elements from the Vespa 50 and 90. That same year, saw the introduction of the sporty Super Sprint 90 model, distinguished by a spare wheel housed in the front compartment topped by a storage bin that could be used as knee support. The engine, with a bore and stroke of 47 by 51 millimeters, produced 6 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and allowed a top speed of 93 kilometers per hour. The 125 Primavera, launched in 1968, with an extended wheelbase of 150 millimeters for improved stability, would become one of the longest-lasting models, remaining in production from 1967 until 1982. With a more compressed engine, it easily reached 85 kilometers per hour. In 1968, the adoption of rotary valve engines was also extended to the sportier versions, including the Vespa 180 Rally. The first Vespa with an automatic transmission featuring expandable pulleys and a centrifugal clutch was the PK 125 Automatic. Introduced in 1984, followed the next year by the PK 50 Automatic. The 4-speed models remained the 2 sporty 125 ETS and T5 pole position, both from 1985 but completely different from each other. While the ETS followed the PK line with an 8.5 horsepower engine reaching 97 kilometers per hour. The T5, with a horizontal engine and rear design inspired by past sports models, delivered 11 horsepower and reached 104 kilometers per hour. In an attempt to reclaim a declining market, new vehicles were planned, even with external designs. Notable among these was an interesting prototype body designed by Pininfarina, but the idea that the best work should be done internally ultimately prevailed. Thus, from a local architect's proposal industrialized at Pontedera came a completely new vehicle, unveiled in 1987. Despite its original appearance, it retained the Vespa's fundamental characteristics: a metal body, the 2 rear side panels, the single-arm front suspension, and more. However, to give a sense of novelty, the name was changed. Unfortunately, the chosen name, Cosa, seemed to reflect the uncertainty of the time. Realizing that a reintroduction of Vespa's classic design could stand out among increasingly uniform scooters, a relaunch was decided. The comeback happened with the 125 ET4 model in 1996. While updated, the design revived the classic motifs and the load-bearing metal body, while the engine, meeting anti-pollution standards, was now a 4-stroke. A 2-stroke engine with electronic injection would be used on the 50 cubic centimetre model instead. In 2005, the Vespa also became a maxi scooter with the GTS 250 model, equipped with a 22 horsepower engine and capable of exceeding 130 kilometers per hour. Among many scooters, the Vespa stands out with its unmistakable shapes and upright riding position, confirming the ever-lively relevance of a design born 60 years earlier. We remind you that for engine parts and more for vintage and modern Vespas, you can visit the website www.thekingofpiston.com.